Joining me now is the former acting deputy secretary for Homeland Security, and by the way, he is the former Virginia Attorney General, Ken Cuccinelli. Mr. Cuccinelli, thank you for joining us. You know, we were here last week and we saw 25,000 troops, I guess, protecting this area right over here. Do you think that was overkill?
Oh, it was absolutely overkill. There was no question about it. We knew it all at the time, but it was requested in the most strenuous terms by the speaker. And what I'm referring to is the last upping of those numbers to go past 20,000. I mean, there was a division there with literally no specific intelligence of any threat. I think they wanted the visual, and I think that's why you're seeing them, many of them kept there for weeks and weeks longer. And now, of course, I am out of the Department of Homeland Security, so maybe there's some new intelligence. But for weeks, and I'm not saying anything classified because it was said publicly, there was nothing specific. There was elevated chatter. I'm sure you heard that phrase, and I continue to hear that phrase. And I see a lot of politicizing of this whole effort, including, unfortunately, by my former Department of Homeland Security, who also put out a terrorist bulletin with, as best I can tell, no new information. So there's a really sad politicization of the use of the National Guard, of the use of the warning system. All of this is being politicized by the other side.
You know, interesting you say that, elevated chatter, and I remember that term from back when Barack Obama was sworn in. There was elevated chatter about an assassination plot. Not only that, I believe there was credible threats to that, and that to the point where they were actually going to move the inauguration. They decided not to, but I was there for that as well, and there was nowhere near the presence that we saw just a week ago.
Well, no question, and the inauguration is, for your viewers, what's called a National Special Security Event, NSSE. It's a designation that was put in place in the 90s. It was the 67th NSSE. Those are all run by the Secret Service. They had been planning for the inauguration in a COVID environment for 8 months. Even with what happened on January 6th, January 6th wasn't a fraction of what the Secret Service plans for at an event like the inauguration. And of course, the inauguration went off smoothly, just as it did 4 years before. And you'll remember the burning limo at the Trump inauguration. And that did happen. There was some violence and protesting in the city, but it was all kept away from the inauguration, just as was done this year, and just as was done, as you noted, when President Obama was inaugurated. This was well in hand at all times, led by the Secret Service. It's a whole of government effort, but there was never any serious danger to the inauguration.
So can we go back a couple of weeks, three weeks? You know, there's a lot of finger pointing about the day the Capitol was stormed by the group.
Yeah.
Whose responsibility was it to call in the National Guard, and how did it fail? Just give us some sense of what was going on behind the scenes with that whole situation.
Well, you're skipping some steps. There's no presumption that the National Guard had to be part of the solution. If they were going to be part of the solution, the way the National Guard works, they're not a 911 force. You have to plan ahead for them, and you have to pre-position them. And you will recall the letter Mayor Bowser of Washington, D.C. sent to all of us federal officials in the days before January 6th. Stay away. Keep your officers away from here. We've got this. That was her letter. Not much press on that, interestingly enough. The backup plan for the Capitol Police, as best I've been able to discern it, was the Washington Metro Police. And for the former Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security to have to say to you, as best I can discern it, means they didn't share with us their plans beforehand. And make no mistake, the Capitol Police answers to Congress directly. They were responsible for that failure. They were totally unprepared. Their leadership put their officers in terrible positions. And even when the Washington police came in numbers, it was too little, too late, and they weren't properly equipped. Our Secret Service officers, uniformed, as well as Federal Protective Service officers, came as soon as the Capitol Police requested us. but they have to request it. It is their jurisdiction. If we just invade their space, you start ending up with blue on blue, violence that has to be controlled by the leading entity, in this case, the Capitol Police.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that hasn't really come out. I mean, there was a lot of finger pointing who's responsible for calling in the National Guard, but I think this is the first time I've heard that Mayor Bowser send a letter out telling other law enforcement agencies to stay away. We have this, and then when it broke down, I think that she was one of the people pointing the fingers at President Trump for not having it locked down.
Absolutely. That's right. Well, compare the reaction to what's gone on in Portland and Seattle and everywhere else. Look, I appreciate the vigorousness with which people committing violence in the nation's capital are being prosecuted. But let's not kid ourselves. This country created an environment that gave the impression that violence was sometimes acceptable as a form of protest. I mean, you heard it on mainstream media. My friend Chris Cuomo saying things like, well, the assumption that protests always have to be peaceful isn't right. Well, yes, actually it is. And people like Don Lemons and others virtually encouraging the violence, and prosecutors who wouldn't prosecute. And you can say at the federal level, there was far more vigorousness in prosecuting what happened January 6th than there has been in these cities that's gone on for 7 months. We created an environment where violence seemed acceptable.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. Ken Cuccinelli, thank you for your time.
Good to be with you.